it's Jason Cunningham and welcome back to Save My Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners navigate through the proverbial shitstorm. Now, today's guest is a superstar. His name is Mark Castagnini, aka The Hammer. Now, this guy has got a bit of a story to tell and it's got a few lessons in it for all of us. Now, I'll take you back to his early career where he won the World Kickboxing Association Australian Cruiserweight title. He began life in Kyokushin karate, and I've no doubt I've pronounced that incorrectly. Moved into doing a bit of Muay Thai, and really well known for one of Australia's first MMA fighters. I'm slightly nervous being in his company. I'll be honest with you, I'm 15 metres away from him and am running backwards as we speak. But not only that, he's moved into commentating. He's one of Fox Sports' superior commentators in the fight game. He runs and promotes his own fights. He's been a head of publications at Blitz Publications. He's had his own TV show, Hammer Time, you guessed it, at Fox Sports. He's previously been an upholsterer and runs an amazing, successful business known as Hammer's Gym out in Nunawading. Mark Castagnini, aka The Hammer, welcome, pal.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me in. The beautiful offices here. I'm looking around. I'm quite impressed.
Hammer, it's good to see you again. I remember the last time I saw you, there was a few people you were chasing down the street. No, I'm only joking. Hammer, before we kick things off, I've been meaning to ask you this question for a long time, but I've been too nervous to, and I don't want you to demonstrate why, but can you tell us why you're called The Hammer?
It's a bit of a funny story. In the early days of fighting, I mean, as you alluded to earlier, I started in traditional martial arts, and there's no fanfare in any of that. Full contact, bare knuckle karate, Kyokushin for the uninitiated. It's a very brutal style of martial art karate. But then through various hand injuries, because you're fighting bare knuckles, so I busted up my hand pretty badly in a tournament. So I had to move. My doctor said, you've got to move into a sport that's, gloves or give it up or whatever, So I thought I'd attempt a bit of kickboxing. I got invited to, someone invited me. Well, I used to, long story short, I used to be a bouncer as well. I worked 3 jobs pretty much all my life. One of them was bouncing. One of the punters at one of the clubs knew I was a bit of a martial artist and come up to the door of a club I was running and he goes, you think you're pretty good? Enter this. Handed me a flyer for a Muay Thai tournament. Or Bob Jones was running, fight nights or fight days. And I was in between styles at that point, so to speak, because I couldn't fight bare knuckle anymore. So I thought, throw on a pair of gloves and give it a go. So rolled up, Preston Town Hall, registered. And I think I got runner-up in the heavyweight division. Pretty much had my head punched off my shoulders because Kyokushin doesn't have a lot of head striking. Because of the bare knuckle aspect, most of the striking is to the body or, not to the face. You can kick to the face, but you can't punch to the face. So there's some sort of logic in that. And I didn't question it. I just did it. So, anyway, so I entered this tournament, got placed quite well. Come to the attention of Bob Jones. He invited me to train with the Bob Jones Corporation. And that's sort of how I started, my journey into the kickboxing and the Muay Thai. And subsequently from there, I had, boxing fights to keep busy. And to get back to your question on how I got the name The Hammer. So once I started fighting kickboxing, various fighters had monikers, and I'm standing on the door one night and one of the doormen with me is like, What's your fight name? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you fight kickboxing, you got to have a fight name. And I'm like, got no idea. And he goes, I reckon we'll call you The Hammer because you hammer things. And you can take that whatever way you want. It was security, the 80s, everyone was having a lot of fun. So, but yeah, it was, so that was it. Just one of the boys on the door guy, basically said, you go all right. So, just to give me that name and it sort of stuck.
It's usually the way with the Australian Aussie vernacular and the way things stick. People have got these amazing nicknames and often they're just from some random punter that said, all right, we're going to call you The Hammer, away you go. Tell me this, I'm intrigued with martial arts. I studied martial arts as a kid and then as a younger adult, and some would argue that I'm still growing up now at the prime young age of 47. But one of the things that martial arts, so I studied Shotokan karate, strike first, strike hard, and then did another style when I was a bit older. But one of the things that karate teaches you is the art of discipline. And I thought as a kid learning karate, the reason that I would learn it is so that I could stick up for myself and learn self-defense. And from there as a young pubescent teenager was be able to belt up kids in the playground. But in actual fact, what it does is it teaches you the art of self-discipline.
Yeah, I love this question. Thank you for raising it. So why martial arts? Let me say this to everyone listening. Martial arts has made me the person I am. I was an introvert. I was a loner. I had anger issues because of, my father was killed when I was 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
My stepfather was very much a disciplinarian. He's an ex-military man. He was a matador in Portugal and Spain. He was in the war in Angola in Africa, and he was a no bullshit sort of guy. So I was brought up quite hard, and he he wasn't one of these guys that'll tell you he loves you. I never said it to me in his life. He was it was always tough love. There was never any compliments given as a child to me. There was never any positives in my life as a young man at all. Which as a teenager and in my late teens, early 20s, I used to work as an upholsterer, as you said earlier. We did some big jobs. So my stepfather and I, we upholstered a box that was presented to the Queen of England when she came to Australia years ago. It was made out of Australian oak or whatever it was, and the inside of it was aligned with kangaroo hide.
Wow!
So I've done work for John Elliott. I don't know, the older listeners might remember John. He was the president of Carlton Football Club. Jack Chia, who was a very rich Melburnian Chinese man. We worked at the upper echelon of Melbourne society in the antique restoration and upholstery. Mm-hmm. But my life was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day in our shopping queue. And then on Sunday, my day off was for cleaning the backyard, picking up the dog poo, washing cars, getting ready for the week ahead. Yeah. So my upbringing was very strict and very traditional. Wasn't allowed to go out, had no friends. That was all a waste of time. I was quite a good footy player when I was a kid, but as I said, it was all about getting a trade and making something of yourself as a young man with I suppose, an ethnic background. So as I got into my late teens, early 20s, I become very negative on life. And people talk about suicide and this and that. And I had dark thoughts. And, I read a book called The Plus Factor when I was young. Just by chance, my stepdad's idea of entertainment while we were working was to listen to the ABC, Parliament, 3LO actually, I think it was back in the day. But on that, with that, as a teenager, like, man, if I hear any more opera and more politics, I'm going to neck myself. So, but there was an author that come on there and he was talking about this book he launched called The Plus Factor, and it just really resonated with me. So I went out, and I wasn't a big reader. I wasn't a good, I left school in year 10, My story was, I'd come home from school, end of school year, and the old man's gone, how old are you? I'm like, 15. He goes, how old you got to be to leave school? I go, 16. He goes, close enough, start work next year with me. So that was it. So I started work, did the trade, as I said, listening in the workroom, little, probably 4x4 metre workroom, 2 men in there working, doing our couches and chairs, whatever else we were working on. Listen to the ABC, this author come on. This book was all about self-confidence and empowering yourself, which is very, at the time was just what I needed. I read the book and there were some really good key strategies there on how to block out negativity. Someone's talking to you negative, imagine putting on like a motorbike helmet, nothing gets through, you don't hear any of the negativity. There's simple strategies from memory. But it really changed my perception on how I perceive myself. And, without going too much into detail, I was looking at, not continuing my life as a young man, if that makes sense. And that was I knew what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. I wasn't asking for pity. I wasn't telling anyone I was going to do it. I just thought, this is not for me, this life. But
gee whiz, Mark, that's a pretty dark place.
That was where I was. I used to come home. I remember as being 18, 19, 20, we'd work on a Saturday. We'd work on a Saturday night till 7, 8, 9 o'clock. And we'd be driving home, down on Burwood Highway or wherever it was that we were going. And as I was coming home, I'd see carloads of people the same age of me going out.
Yeah.
And they were in the cars. I still remember it, I get quite emotional. Laughing and, young girls and young guys together. And I was like, man, I've worked all day. I'm going home. I've got to sit in my room. And I, watch, my big Saturday night was get a bag of potato chips and a soft drink and watch telly and go to sleep and get ready for Sunday and
bit of Hey Hey at Saturday or something like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. Watch Hey Hey at Saturday. Try and get a bit of enjoyment out of that.
How old were you when you got into martial arts then?
I did it sort of covertly when I was younger, because as I said, I was told, sport's a waste of time. There was one kid when I went to Northcote Tech, which is pretty rough and ready school back in the day, and one of the kids I was at school with, his dad was a martial arts instructor, judo instructor. Did a little bit with him. Yep. After school we'd go and we'd play a little bit, and then I stopped. And then I got back into it again when I was around 21. So that's when I left home. So as I said, I had all this stuff. My life wasn't going well. And then I just thought, I have to change it. And I went home. I bought a car. I got a car initially when I was young, and it was a big thing for me, because the old man was, well, you work at home. You live at home. You work with me. You get all your food. You got your board. You don't need money. $70 a week will do you. So I had to save. So I had no money, but I saved for years, and I had enough money to get a car. I bought a car, was given one day off, and on that, one of those first drives I did with my new car, I went and rented a flat. So I rented a flat in North Caulfield, unbeknown to my folks. I went home, and I said, how's your day? You went for a drive? I said, yeah, actually, I've got a place, I want to move into my own place. And the old man hasn't missed a beat, and he's gone, well, you leave the house, you leave the job, so good luck. So I was out of home, I was out of work, and my life was about to begin. And that was when the real fun started. So.
Mark, it's amazing. Our family of origin often shapes who we become. And I say this respectfully, you have situations where there's a son of an alcoholic and he might become an alcoholic, or he's just right off the grog, right? And different people with their makeup react differently to that upbringing. Now, I hear a story like that, a pretty harsh story.
Yeah.
A disciplinarian, the son of a disciplinarian, ex-military guy, worked you to the bone, right? You could have gone one or two ways, Mark.
Yeah, I could have. Everyone's got a sad story. No one cares. So.
Isn't that true? And I'm keen to explore it a bit deeper, and I know that, when I listen to this, I'm going to recall and have flashbacks to this conversation.
Yeah.
I say this respectfully, and cutting to the chase. Have you reconciled with your father or your stepfather?
Yeah, he unfortunately passed away just over a year ago, so I want to get back to the martial arts. The impetus of the question you asked about the martial arts. The martial arts for me. So moving on, I moved out of home. I lost my job, got into various other activities. I've never worked one job in my life. I've always worked minimum 2 or 3.
Well, that's when he's paying you $70 a week,
And I did that, and I got back into the martial arts, and that changed my life. Martial arts has given me strength, given me resilience. You're taught via martial arts not to give up. That's the key. It's the key to everything in life. We're all going to have a bad day. You have bad days. I've driven to training. I sat in my car and I'm like, man, I'm so tired. I'm fried. Got to go in now and smack on, punch on. It's like, but you know what? I never regret it, because I know once I get out of my car, haul my ass out of the car, get onto the mat, move around, shadow box, I'm on.
You're in your zone. You're in your.
It's just a matter of pushing on. Everyone has this whole thing of stay motivated and have a great day. It's all bullshit. Everyone has bad days. It's what you do when you have a bad day that matters. So you can wallow in self-pity, or you can just go, you know what, it's a bad day, tomorrow will be better. I just got to get through this one. It's like in a fight. You may not win every round, but if you have one bad round and you throw the towel, you're never going to win that fight. So you will have a bad round. You will have a bad day. You will have a bad month. 2020, we're having a bad year, you know. But you can't just chuck the towel and go, well, that's it, you know. And going back to what I was talking about in my early life, I nearly chucked the towel on my life because I was having a pretty bad time of it when I was younger. But you know, by pushing through, and I've had so many wonderful experiences, met so many wonderful people, and done so many great things that I appreciate greatly now. It's just a matter of having that resilience to never give up. And it's a bit cliche, but it's life. You know, I did my corporate years, I did many business seminars, and, you know, it was all about mindset. And there was one thing that really stuck with me. A guy goes, you know what, you can get up, get out of bed, the day's about to start, you walk to the end of it, bang, you hit your foot on the end of the bed. Fuck, you can get your coffee and you spill your coffee and it's like, fuck, it's going to be one of those days. Well, you'll make it one of those days if you tell yourself. Yeah. But, you know, these things happen. Don't blow things out of proportion. Keep things in perspective. Man, I've been married twice. I've had 2 divorces. I've had failed businesses, and I've never given up. You know, just because you have a failure doesn't mean that's the end of anything. Yeah. Just because you have a bad round in a fight doesn't mean you're going to lose that fight. Yeah. You just have to regroup, learn from your mistakes, and come back harder and better. That's what the fighting and martial arts has taught me. I'll go to training some nights when I was a junior or younger, and I'll just be on and I'm kicking and punching like I'm in a movie. And then I'll go to training the next night and I'll be the punching bag. Might as well wrap me in red vinyl and hang me from a chain because everyone's punching me up. You know what I'm saying?
That's the upholstery coming out, right?
Make sure the stitching's, double. But, so you will have good and bad days. And in training, and this is what I tell all my students, don't think you're going to come to training every night and dominate. And don't think you're going to come to training every night and have bad nights. You'll have good and you'll have bad. So the similarity in life is you'll have good and bad, you know, and that's what the martial arts and I think most training sessions, you should take that. Some days you'll go to the gym and you'll lift great, you'll feel great. Yeah. Other days you'll be tired and zapped and maybe your nutrition's off and you'll have worry and you won't have the best training session. Or, footy, some days there's footy players that get best on ground. There's next week they play like Muppets. Why? It's the same person. It's the same, biological person there. They got the same.
I heard once it's, so much has got to do with mindset. You spoke earlier about mindset, and I heard a woman speak who's done some work, a power of work with the Richmond Footy Club.
Yep.
Her name escapes me. I think it's Emma Murray is her name. I know Ben Crow does a bit of work there as well. And she talks about mindset in your A game and your B game. And she said everyone's got an A game and everyone's got a B game.
Yeah.
And she argues that the biggest challenge is how do you get into that A game mentality, right? And, listening to you, and it's almost like you're reading ahead the questions that I've written down. But because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I do this often when I talk to business owners, I reckon business owners can glean a lot from elite sporting teams into business. And you run an amazingly successful business out there in Nunawading, Hammers Gym. What have you now? Is that on the highway?
The White Horse Road.
Yeah, White Horse Road. Yeah. So I'm driving. So if I come off, turn left, I'm on Springvale Road. I turn left, go along. You're on the right hand side.
Right. Yeah, we're right opposite Nunawading Toyota, and you know where the Golden Mile is with all the furniture stores and all. They were right next door to Bunnings. So and Billy Hyde's on the other side of it. So there's some pretty iconic brands in that strip there, and we're right on there. Yeah.
Tell me, what have you taken out of the ring and from training, and what principles have you approached in your business life? I know I'm getting the impression the first one is just never give up.
Yeah, well, look, work hard. You can't succeed as a fighter if you don't work hard. It's not the stuff that you do in the fight that matters. It's the stuff you do before the fight. It's the preparation. You want to start a business, what do you have to do? You've got to do your projections. You've got to do, your analysis, your business analysis. Yeah. You've got to do, P&Ls and, figure out what's my bottom line? What's my goals? In training, it's the same. You have to do that preparation. It's what you do away from the spotlight that matters. It's cliche, but it's true. And in business, it's the same. We talk about this recent COVID situation. I was in there scrubbing the weights. So it's like, we closed down. Oh, what am I going to do? we can't do nothing about it. It's a global thing.
Yeah.
I can sit at home and get on the conspiracy theories, and we're all going to be microchipped, and Bill Gates is. You do all of that, but.
Yeah.
And you know what? And what about it? What about if all these conspiracy theories are true? What about that? What we got to do? Still got to make a living. Don't care. Got to do what I got to do. Stick a microchip in me. I don't care. I'm still going to make money. I'm still going to provide the best I can for my family. Whatever. I can only control things that I can control. What I can't control is sometimes the outside forces. If a flood happens and my gym gets washed out, I just got to make it better. If something happens outside of my environment that I cannot control, well, that's just bad luck. Pick yourself up and start swinging again and do the best you can. So, the resilience, it comes back to that. You're right. It comes back to that resilience that I've always had to have in my life. I had to have that resilience from an early age just to get myself out of the funk I was in as a kid. I started martial arts going back to that because I was so void of any sort of feelings that I was, as I said, alone. I was pretty numb to any sort of emotion. And I found emotion through fighting because, getting hit,
yeah,
you feel pain, you feel something. And I was just glad to be feeling something because I was numb to everything else. So, coming through all, the hardness of, I suppose, the emotional challenges I had as a youngster made me be more resilient to what society throws at me today.
Yeah, right.
And I'm being challenged at this point. When I planned where my gym was, I did my due diligence. I made sure there was nothing in the area because I didn't want to compromise, or I didn't want to threaten anyone else's business. I'm not going to open my gym in an attempt to attack someone else's, into IP or, I think they're doing well, so I'm going to open up next to them. So I strategically picked where I was going to open my gym. There was nothing else around the area. Well, other people have gone, geez, he's doing well. Let's go and open a gym right next door to him. And there's a couple of stories in there that I won't go into, but some people I even knew quite well have tried to attack my business model and my business. Opening nearby, copying what I do, copying my marketing. As they say, when they say someone copies you is a great form of flattery.
Yeah, compliment. Yeah.
I think screw them. They should come up with their own ideas. But nevertheless,
it's almost like you've read ahead when I went to the bathroom because I've written here. What did you do? How do you deal with your competitors? And I know you pulled the hammer. I'm a bit nervous. I wouldn't be opening a gym next door to you. That's for sure. Hey, tell me this, Mark. Your outlook on life is fantastic, and I've been reading a book by Matthew McConaughey, of all people.
Yep.
Oh, well, when I say reading, listening to his audio book, it's called Green Lights, and it's amazing. And he talks about his upbringing, and he talks about there's green, amber, and red lights, and he's all about turning the amber and like a stop sign, right? Green, go; amber, be cautious; and red, stop. And he always talks about, I think it's a stop sign, but in actual fact, it's a green light hidden, right, in a red light. And I'm listening to you tell me your story and your upbringing and the amount of times you got knocked down and beaten around the head and all this sort of stuff, and I find it intriguing that you say, getting punched in the face helped me regain my emotions.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's awesome. And I know that martial arts has had a fair bit to do with it. And if I can relate, I remember the first time I went to karate and my father took me to karate. It was in a school hall, which is often where a lot of the dojos are.
Yep.
And on the wooden floorboards, and the sensei said, "All right, let's do our push-ups on your knuckles."
On your knuckles, yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I'm happy on carpet, you know what I mean? And just the things that I remember we went on a karate camp and we ran in the beach and ran in the water in our gis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I bought my bathers, right? And they go, no, you wear your gi and you wash your gi and you hang it up.
And you put it on wet the next day. Let me just allude to that, first of all, because that brings back a lot of memories for me. Yeah. Number one, the karate hall. Yes, Elwood. I trained with my karate instructor, Shian EDM, in Kyokushin in Elwood. He was one of the pioneers of martial arts in Australia. And it was like, I roll up, and he's like, all right, I'm here. And he's like, all right, clean the floor. Like, what do you mean? I grab that towel. There wasn't no broom. It was like you run up and down the dojo floor with a towel.
We used to do that too.
And it was like, if I asked any kid to do that today, I'll clean the floor, they're looking at me like I'm an axe murderer and I'm a child abuser.
Yeah.
It's like, get a grip these days. People are too fucking soft. Sorry, excuse my language.
No, we welcome the French on this podcast, Mark.
It grinds my gears, the sensitivity and the bullshit around the stuff today is just, it really drives me bananas. And I think if people are so sensitive, you create more sensitivity. Not, I'm trying to verbalise this. You do. I'm not saying to be overly, emotionally unavailable or any of that stuff. But you know what? There's a middle ground, and I think, it's what they say, the silent majority now. I think a lot of people listening to this may go, yeah, fucking he's right. But they'll never say it because you'll be accused of being racist or sexist or fucking something otherist. So, it's like one of my mates who runs security these days, he was telling me the other day, he goes, I was on the door and I said, guys, can you please line up in one single line and space? And a couple of people popped out of line. He goes, we're offended by that. We don't identify as male. You can't call us guys. And I'm like, I would last 2 minutes doing security these days because
the hammer in Mark Castagnini might come out. Hey, it's funny. I gleaned a lot of advice from my father. Yeah. He grew up. My old man's 72 years old, and he was a bit rough around the edges, so to speak. And,
old school.
He was old school. And he used to tell me a story when he was growing up that if they were congregating, my old man grew up in Pascoval and Coburg, and if you were congregating on the street corners, they used to call them the bodgy squad. The coppers would come around and say, boys, go home or you cop a flog it. Yeah. And if they saw him again, the coppers would belt him. Now, I'm not condoning violence, although in your company I will. But what Dad would say is that form of discipline stopped a lot of other problems happening. Now the police are dealing with all sorts of stuff where coppers are arresting crooks and using strong arm tactics because that's the only language they understand. And, that backlash. And you and I could go on that for hours, but we're here to talk about business. What I'm keen.
I think you're right, and it goes back to I still look at respecting people. My saying at my gym, my martial arts gym is, fear none, respect all. Yeah, I'll respect everybody. Doesn't matter who it is, but no one's going to make me scared. Yeah, you can't go through life. Living life in fear is not living at all, and that might be from. You're fearful of things go wrong or this or that. You have to have, you can't have, and in business, paralysis by analysis. Yeah. Don't analyse a new business idea to the point where it never happens. So, there's a lot of dimension to this. But going back to the respect all thing, I think to round this off, in martial arts, it's about respecting seniors. Respecting higher ranks. It's a hierarchical system like the military. You have to respect the person there.
The brown belt respects the black belt, the blue belt respects the brown belt, and the black belt respects the sensei. Yeah,
because they've done the hard yards. And I say, you've got to give the high ranks respect because they've done things that you haven't done. And in this world, I think you have to give elderly people respect because they've lived a life. You can't say, I'll do this or that. Well, they've lived what you haven't. Have you lived to 80? Do you know what they've been through? So don't disrespect anyone that's older than you because whether you like it or not, they've probably lived a life more so than you have. So I'm a big one on respecting as I'm getting older too. I sort of command that too. I'm not going to take shit from someone that's half my age or, I'll take knowledge and I listen and I absorb everything. But, when I've got a 22-year-old Instagrammer telling me how to motivate my life when they've lived at home with mum and dad, it's like, please spare me, Let's just be real with what we're doing and show me what challenges you've had in your life that you've got through that have earned you your stripes.
Mate, Mark, in fear of pissing you off, because I know you hate a cliche, right? And that's been learned in the first 25 minutes or whatever. But you are the epitome of don't judge a book by its character. Who would have thought the 1995 Australian Cruiserweight champion would be dropping that many quotes and that many life-changing? It's outstanding. And I'm still at least 15 yards away from you.
I'm going to give you a hug before we go because we're going to break this. No,
we're not hugging nothing. Down. I don't want any ribs broken, right? When he's telling me the story about the bare-knuckle fighting, I was thinking about Jean-Claude Van Damme, when he rubbed his knuckles in the broken glove. Was that a kickboxer or whatever? Outstanding stuff. Mark, firstly, thank you for what
pleasure.
you've shared so far.
Pleasure.
And I'm not letting you go.
Absolutely.
All right. Unless you want to go, you can walk freely out the door.
I'm
happy to stand in the line and do whatever the fuck you say. No, just playing a game. Tell me how you lead your team. So you're in a gym.
Yep.
Right. All of us have been through it this year. You know, no one's hurt as much as gym owners. Yep. Whether you're a MMA gym, whether you whether you're Doherty's, we've got Big Tony Doherty coming on soon, and whatever. No one's hurt as much as gyms. I'm keen to hear, how have you led your team? How do you lead your team before, during, and post? And what are some of the things you did to make it quid?
Let me tell you, how did I get through? Because I've always had a mentality of have a war chest, of savings. And when business is good, sort of make hay, but also make bank, So since I opened, we and before, had some good times, had some good profitable, quarters or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And rather than go off and waste it on extravagance, I invested it back into the business. And since I opened the business, and I've had a couple of failures. One nightclub I opened, I got into the nightclub game. I owned a club called Area 61, which is in Fitzroy Street, St Kilda. I learned a lot of valuable lessons out of that. I lost about $250K when I shut it up, and that was some years ago. But I learned, it was a $250,000, course in marketing and everything else to do with business that I needed to do. At the time, I didn't understand it, and I really hurt.
Yeah.
And I had to start from scratch, which I've done a couple of times in my life, but it doesn't matter because now I knew when I opened my gyms, do it right the first time, don't skimp, put everything into it. You get one chance to make a first impression, all of that. So, but moreover, I thought bad times can come, and from areas that you may not expect. So my theory was always, I want to have a year of income in the bank so that if something happens to me or something happens to the business, I'm sweet. So that little, war chest really helped me out.
It's funny. We one of the things that we share with our clients when we're helping them grow their businesses, and we talk about the role of the director. And we talk about the role of the director should be broken down into 4 key categories. And you've touched on one of them. And the categories are leadership, growth, protection, and space. And you've spoken about that protection piece where the level of comfort that you've got is having a year's worth of income sitting in the bank. That's your protection strategy.
Correct.
And from a person that studied karate, it is a bit of protection. Stand back, watch yourself, and wait to strike, and in I go. You know what I mean? Tell me how, Mark, you lead your team.
Okay, well, this is again another interesting question. So, all right, so financially, I was like, okay, this is not a good situation. We're getting shut down. Who would have seen that coming last year? I must admit, I went to my doctor, Dr. Peter Lewis in Melbourne, who's also a martial artist, but he's also a pioneer of PRP treatments and sporting injuries. He's been my sports medicine doctor for 30 years since I was competing. And I went to him because I've got a fighter that we travelled to Europe. We fought in China. We fought in Europe, last year undefeated. So he's world ranked. And we had to travel to Belgium. I went to Peter in February or late January, early February. I go, Pete, what do you think, this pandemic? He goes, let me tell you, you're not going anywhere. Airlines are going to go broke. Country's going to get shut down. And I'm like, he's lost it. He's taken some of his own medication. This bloke's gone out the back, popped some of his own pills and gone a little bit mad. But you know what? What a profit. Like, he nailed it. When he said airlines are going broke, I'm like, this is, something, the CBD oils had a little bit some extra in it here. But he nailed it all. So I went back and I told my fighter, I said, I can't go overseas because my mum's elderly and I care for her now. I'm like, I don't want to be stark. And then, lo and behold, look what happened. Yeah. So going back to that, sorry, to digress. So it was forever the unforeseen, and this will be a time we all remember for the rest of our lives, without a doubt. Now, I went to the gym, and from that moment on, I thought, if there's any truth in any of this, and there was a pattern, and there's a website called Worldometer, and on that gives you basically hourly updates on coronavirus world cases. So I started checking that, and I'm like, this thing's kicking off. And that was all from that conversation with the doc. So then I started to go back and take that information and make sure you employ it into your business strategy, not as a throwaway thing, evaluate and then execute. So evaluated it and I thought, we've got to be ready because if things go sideways, what are we going to do? So that started to prime my thought process. So my fighter, he's thought, I've lost the plot too. He's still really getting ready to go. We got a big event to fight, had a big event, international event to be on. Then obviously that got canned. And then the wheels started falling off everything basically in Australia. So, when we got shut down, we knew what was coming. And then I got my staff together and I said, look, we're going to get shut down. This is not something we can do anything about. Let's all rally around. This is a good time for us to repaint, clean up, work on things aside, redo our online content. Like I straight away went into, I can't do this, so I've got to do that. Yeah. What else can we do? Pivot is the word of 2020, I think. Yeah. And with it, I suppose in my own way, I thought, well, what can we do? At that point, now we talk about staff, and this is where my old school mentality comes into it. I wanted to sit back and see who was in the fight with me.
Yeah,
There's people that will always be there for the high fives, but who's going to be there for the hard work? And that was at that point, there was probably 2 staff that I thought, they're going. I'm like, can you come in? Oh, I don't know, this and that. How much am I going to get? I'm like, that's not what I want to hear now.
Yeah.
I'll give people bonuses. I take them out. We've partied together. Let's go to dinners. We do all of that. All that motivating shit you got to do these days to keep people just to do what they're being paid to do anyway.
Don't go back there, Mark.
I'm telling you, the hair on the back of the neck's it's kicking up. It's kicking off. No. I had some people that really, stood up and backed me and were there. And then there's other people that are no longer part of my business.
Yeah.
And, there's been some real revelations this year because some of the people that I thought that I've given a lot to, they've disappeared. Probably not much in my life anymore, to be honest with you. Yeah. Other people I hardly knew just have come forward and gone, mate, what do you need?
In times of adversity, that's where the real...
I'm still learning,
To pitch an analogy from footy, it's easy to be patting each other on the arse when you're 10 goals up.
Correct.
What happens when you're 10 goals down, going into the third quarter, kicking into a 10-goal breeze? Yeah. That's the true testament of a team and of a leader. Tell me this, what are you going to do different in 2021? What have you learned from 2020 that you can take into the future? I mean, sure, there's going to be elements of your business that are going to be the same, but what have you taken? Because you're a bloke that sees the good in life as opposed to the negative. What are you going to take into the future?
I think not to be complacent with regards to targets and, we are still in uncertain times. What's going to happen in March? I mean, there's always been this, watching the news last night, they're saying, well, Australia's in recession, but now we're out of recession, everything's looking great. Well, is it? What's the deficit? What's the fallout of all of this? Yeah. I've got people in hospitality, good friends, ringing staff going, can you come back to work? And they're like, no, we'll come back in March.
Yeah, when JobKeeper runs out.
Like what's going to happen when JobKeeper, runs out? I hope that everything keeps going well. I honestly do. But I'm going to, as a hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Yeah, that's my analogy. So with regards to staff and how I'm going to manage them, they're going to dictate to me what I'm going to give to them. My business, and through, let me tell you something, 22 years of publishing, I've ran sales teams, I've ran editorial teams, I've ran graphic design teams, I've overseen printing divisions. We had a pumping magazine publishing business. Would you do a magazine today? Who's buying a magazine today?
No one.
Look at how the golden years of, there was magazines, we were running back in the day, we're making 100,000 a month in advertising. Really, and these were niche magazines, they're not even mainstream magazines. There was money, hand over fist, publishing was booming, and look how that world's changed. But going back to the staff thing, one thing I learned back then, sometimes we put up with staff that we didn't need to put up with. We sucked it up and like, oh, they're all right, we'll just, But I've never replaced the staff member and not gotten someone better.
My business partner, Robbie Haddad, says this a lot, right? And he says that the challenge with having an underperforming team member is that what happens is all the pressure goes on to those that are performing.
Correct.
And what we end up doing by trying to look after an underperforming team member is we're actually punishing the good performers. Yeah. And so he goes, we've got to be ruthless, Jay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sort of a people first guy, and Rob's more of the processes and systems first. And, you know, my way's not the right way and his way's not the right way, but somewhere
it's
in the middle.
100%.
It's somewhere in the middle. And, I've really learnt a lot, even today in conversations and listening to you reinforcing that message.
I think, you know, evaluate staff collectively and individually, but look at what are they doing outside of the realm, outside of the box, to set them apart. Are they doing anything, or are they just doing what they're being paid to do? Because if they lay blame and justify at any problem, there's a problem. Oh, it wasn't me. He should have done it. I didn't know. No, that's not. Anyone that lay blames and justifies, as soon as I see that trait in them, I'm going to try and manage them out of my business.
Yeah, or
because
they front kick or something like that. Well, what's your getting? Was that roundhouse? Is that right? Is that right?
The thing with owning a fight, Jim, is you can punch people up and say you did it in sparring.
we were training. A big Superman punch, you know? No. Hey, Mark, look, I'm getting really excited and nervous. Before we finish up, I'll just a couple of quick questions if I can. Tell me this, what role does your accountant play in helping you with your business?
Look, I've got to say, you know, it's just the advisory role. It's you know, there's things about the financial world that you can't be au fait with everything. You know, a good friend of mine, Nick Kenos, he started a company called Kenman Candy, which sold off to Mars Corporation some years back, and he used to manage fighters and so forth. And I remember sitting in the boardroom at his office, and he goes, "You can't know everything in your business, but you can employ people that do."
Yeah.
And that, you know, you leave those jobs to the experts. And that's with the accounting. It's like, I'm a very loyal person. So I was with an accounting firm for a long time out of loyalty. And it wasn't until I started working with the practice that there was a lot of things that fell short in the financial side of my business that are now been addressed, and I'm very thankful for that. But it would have made so much of a bigger difference if I would have jump ship longer. But, you know, that's a case of loyalty probably not being the best course of action. So what role do they play? They're a confidant, they're a supporter, they're a safety net, they're a communication tool. Because, you know, when you feel like you're doing it so hard on your own, they can bring you, without sharing, you know, breaking client confidentiality, but they can say, listen, you know, this business, you know, these businesses are being challenged also.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky, you know, I talked to other gym owners and I look outside hospitality, you know, talk to them about staff issues and about, you know, financial challenges of this year have been insurmountable, the amount of stress we have. But we'll get through it and the strong will survive and all of that. And the accountants, and your bookkeepers and your financial people, if you're not financially minded, it's critical that you have a good relationship with them, but moreover, that they talk to you in real terms.
Yeah.
Because there's some accountants that will talk to you in financial terms, and that's not, you know,
that's not the language you speak.
It's like when I teach martial arts, there's people that will learn visually, audio, and by doing.
Yeah.
So you have to understand in any business, you know, if you're going to sell something to someone, and you're going to cater to someone's business, identify what mode of communication engages that client, engages that person. Yeah, so then you can communicate correctly to them on their level. So
true.
And I think with you know, the practice of guys, you guys understand me. You can bring me 20 spreadsheets. I'm going to get an accountant to tell me what you're telling me. So, you know, I get it. I've got a basic understanding, but my business is, what I know is running my business. What I want you guys to do is tell me on the financial side what I need to do. I've entrusted my business in you, with you. So,
Mark, trust me, we're too scared to fuck your stuff up. I'll be honest with you.
But that's across. Goes in any business.
Mark, look, I've probably given that joke a fair bit of a run, and it probably needs to end about now. Mark, I want to finish up by saying thank you for your graciousness.
No problem.
Thank you for your humility and the fact that you've been so generous sharing your nuggets and your gifts with the rest of our listeners. And I tell you what, there's a lot to take out of what you've had to say. A lot of people that were faced with that upbringing and looking at that black dog hanging on your shoulder when you were 19, 20 years old could have gone one or two ways. And I thank you for being so vulnerable to share that with us, because I know a lot of people have been through that. Mate, you're a good man. I enjoy watching you on Fox Sports,
Thank you.
The Hammer. Enjoy having you as a client of ours, and I've really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank
Mark,
you so
the
much.
Hammer Castagnini, thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me speak. And I always love to share my experiences. It may fit with some people, may not. But yeah, if anyone out there is doing it hard, there's a saying, one last, you can take any amount of pain as long as you know it's going to end. And that's really the story this year. We've all gone through a lot of pain and a lot of hardship, but it ends. And whether it means another chapter is going to kick off, and you'll find something different to do, or you just reinvent yourself and go forward with renewed energy and in the new year. Just do your best. That's all we can do in this life.
Mate, this is the 8th podcast we've recorded, right? 8th that's going to go to air. And we have had thought leaders and mindset people. We have never got as many fucking quotes from the Hammer that we've got from everyone. Mark, thanks very much, mate. Now, if we want to find out more, we go to hammersgym.com.au. Is that right?
Yeah, this is my social media too. Mark Hammer Castagnini on Insta, on Facebook. There's Hammer's Gym. We've got the website. Hopefully, I've redone that. It's going to be launched by the time this airs. And I'm also running a charity event for Thailand. So there's no job seeker in Thailand. So this weekend we're running a big event, hopefully raising money, and we're going to send it over to the food kitchens and direct to the families in Thailand of the coaches and the trainers and the fighters that are in need now. So, we think we got it bad. Trust me, there's people around the world that have got it way worse. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate every day and everything we've got. Like, Australia's a great place. Look at Melbourne. Look at the view out of this office. How can you worry about life?
Oh, look, on a brighter note, it would want to be a fucking good view with the amount of rent we're paying here. All right, Hammer, thanks very much, pal. Bye, mate.